Creatine works. The only other, if you want to call it dietary supplement or ergogenic aid that's probably better researched than creatine is caffeine, right, for effectiveness. So creatine is right up there for strength, for power. It works. Now even for cognition, we're finding some stuff. For traumatic brain injuries, we're seeing some stuff. For sleep deprivation, it could help performance as well. Okay, let's take a step back. I don't think testosterone is the issue here. Let's try that. I mean, alcohol suppresses testosterone. Let's cut back on the drinking a little bit. Let's get more than 4 hours of sleep a night. That'll help with the testosterone. Let's clean up your nutrition. That's going to help you. And let's lift some weights. Let's get back to the weightlifting. You forgot about that. You haven't been doing that a while. And it's amazing. It's like you do those basic things and most people feel pretty good.
Welcome to the Performance Initiative Podcast.
Our goal is to provide you and ourselves with the tools to be the best versions of ourselves.
We are your hosts, Dr. Grant Cooper
and Dr. Zenobi Malin. We just wrapped up a conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Nick Barringer, who is an expert on nutrition and performance for the tactical athlete. We discussed questions like, what kind of supplements do you take if you're going to high altitude?
How much protein should you eat in a day, and what kind of protein is best?
Also, do collagen supplements actually work?
Do testosterone boosting supplements work?
Do you lose more weight if you work out on an empty stomach?
And there's really no one better to be talking about this than with Lieutenant Colonel, also Dr. Nick Barringer. Now, Nick, he's taught performance nutrition at the Army Baylor Graduate Program in Nutrition. Nick served in the 75th Ranger Regiment as a member of the Ranger Athlete Warrior Program, where he oversaw the nutrition and aspect of the physical training of the Rangers. Nick is just a wealth of information when it comes to all things nutrition and working out.
Yes, he lives it, he practices it, he researches it, and he teaches it. So he's a wealth of information.
Enjoy.
Nick, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Grant and I would love to ask you a question of how to create an optimized nutrition and supplement program depending on goals and activities, but we realize that that's too broad of a question to start with. So before we jump in, we'd love to take off the table some of the agreed upon
like the basics.
The basics that we can agree upon, so that we can concentrate on the nuances, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So there are some basics of nutrition and diet, like eat more fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
Make sure you get enough protein, and we'll get into what that means. But enough protein. Stay away from processed foods as much as you can. Stay away from refined sugars. Those are basically the basics. Are we on the same page with that?
We're on the same page. Yep. I tell everybody, I mean, we might have changed our mind on whether eggs are good 5 times since I've been a dietitian, but, fruits and veg, and I've always been team egg. I just want to say that. Fruits and vegetables have never went out of style. I've never seen that.
Terrific. Yeah. So we thought maybe we could get into some of the more nuances, and then we can build out from there.
Okay.
And we'll start, basically we'll kind of jump back and forth between the ideas of conditioning and strength as well as nutrition in that context, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
Cool. All right, why don't we jump straight into one of our first things that we wanted to know your opinion on, and that is working out on an empty stomach.
It depends, and this is where people get, I've had some athletes who have a nervous stomach, and they don't want to train with food in their belly. Do I try to encourage them to have food in their belly? Yes. But if, depending on the goals, if your goal is to maximize muscle growth, hypertrophy, and, recovery, or let's say you're a runner trying to set a PR in a 5K or a 10K, you need to eat before. Like that's what's going to set you up for success. If you're just like a general exercise person who likes to get up and do some cardio in the morning, or for whatever reason, you have a hard time just keeping stuff down, then I don't have a problem with that. Will you get any magical, more fat loss out of it? No, for sure not. It does kind of depend on preference.
That is so the way that I had thought about it before was that if you want performance, you should eat, right? Just like you were saying, if you want maximum performance, you've got to eat.
Yeah, fuel. Yep.
But if you wanted to lose weight, I've heard people say, and I don't have a particular horse in the race, but as someone who does intermittent fasting, I like the idea that that if you work out an empty stomach, the first things you're going to burn are going to be more fats because obviously you don't have glucose. Is that a fallacy?
I mean, it's not going to be significant in terms of. I mean, and this is where it's not fun, right? Everybody wants to hear this. Is like it's really energy in versus energy out. There's a lot of. I get it. There's a lot of other hormones and signaling that can drive how much energy you consume, etc. But if that exercise in the morning causes an energy deficit, right, for that day, then you're going to lose weight. Yeah. If it doesn't, you're not going to lose weight. So
there's no outsmarting the system in terms of,
no, you probably
just think about the work you're doing, basically.
That's it, really, is getting the work in.
And actually, if you think of it that way, you would probably end up with saying, calories being equal, you'd rather work out before, you'd rather eat before the workout because you'll probably get a better workout. In which case, you'll end up burning more because you got a better workout.
Yeah, maybe you put more effort into it. And I'm glad, Grant, you brought up, time restricted feeding, because that's a tool in the toolbox. I mean, that's what I tell people. Hey, I personally like breakfast. I enjoy it, but I also know individuals that can use that to kind of create a deficit. Are you guys getting the ping? I'm sorry, from messages. Okay.
No.
Just want to make sure.
On your,
Yeah.
I think Stephen will tell us if.
Okay.
If anything, yeah.
Well, we're not hearing
good.
now.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, that's good. I got to figure out how to turn that off on my messages because it's like coming over. I'm getting like a ping, but I just want to make sure that wasn't coming through. But go on. Sorry.
No, not at all. What were we just saying?
Oh, we were talking about so I guess the question on workouts on an empty stomach came out of the time restricted eating, of course, because for those that want to get the workout early in the day, if you have a work day ahead of you, then the question is, can you work out? Are you in any deficit, and is that a good idea? But within that context, what's your take on time restricted feeding?
In terms of just overall health, also,
yeah,
I would say.
Time restricted feeding, it works. When we look at, whether that's some good rules is don't go below a 6-hour window. Like, don't make it too tight. I think there was a paper, I could get the author, look it up for you, where they looked at 6 versus 4 hours. And when you went to 4, you didn't get as much benefit as 6. That's kind of the tightest window you'd want. And then also I'd worry about getting enough micronutrients and your macronutrients in that window. So having a time restricted program, and Grant, you might be able to attest to this, is you have to be very, your meals have to be very thought out and very specific if you want to hit all your nutritional targets. It's easier probably to hit that over a larger window. But again, it's a tool and it works for a lot of people's schedule. And I know, there's folks that wake up and they're not hungry and they don't want to eat breakfast. And so maybe they eat at noon and then they stop eating at 7 or 8 in the evenings. And that's a way to kind of provide control over their nutrition program. And I'm fine with that.
Yeah. To me, the time restricted is sort of, there's two pieces to it. One is the idea of weight management and, managing your calories. The other is the idea of autophagy.
Yes.
Which I think it's probably harder to, this is one of those things that's harder to measure and be sure on. Do you have any feelings about that? That it is?
Yeah. I tell people there's interesting papers in animal models, right? Where we see if we, restrict the caloric intake of mice, they live longer. I haven't seen anything like compelling in humans that's going on. But again, with that being said, if it's a way to control your caloric intake and to therefore maintain your body weight and your body composition in a healthy range that, sets you up for success and a better health span, then I'm all for that. Beyond that, do I know if like fasting is, doing anything magical? That's why like the 72-hour water fast, I'm seeing that pop up quite a bit. And people talk about, it has all these, anti-cancer benefits. I have yet to find that paper. Everybody's talking. I noticed nobody cites it at the bottom on their, on the Instagram feed, because I haven't seen it. The only things I see is over 72 hours, there's many studies that look at the weight that you lose and what's the composition of it. And 2/3 of it is, lean mass.
Yeah.
So, if you don't eat, you're also going to lose some muscle. some of which is probably glycogen, right? The carbohydrate in the muscle and fluid, et cetera. But it's not this magical, cure for fat loss.
Yeah. What about the other side of that coin? The idea of 30 within 30, right? The 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, there's nothing magical about it. It could be a tool or a trigger to set people up for success throughout the day, which I'm good. I am team protein. I know as we age, we don't use protein as efficiently. You want to preserve that lean muscle mass because once we get over the age of 60, you guys probably know as well as anybody's like falls, get folks. So I want to preserve that lean muscle mass. So if that's a way to kind of start my day and get, me closer to that 0.8 grams per pound, I'm good with it. As far as it doing something magic to your metabolism, not so much.
Yeah. I think I'm getting a feeling of where you're at with this, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. Is there a best time of day to work out in your opinion to get the most gains, or is it basically it's ins, it's outs, it's as much work as you can put in, and that's what you should be thinking of?
I think there was a paper, and I don't know who to give credit to, that it was like people were stronger in the afternoons. But again, it's going to be what works best for you. For instance, I prefer to work out in the afternoons. That is my happy place. If I can work out at like 3 p.m. every day, I would. However, I have these things called children. Ooh. That, I don't know if you guys have kids, that they get a vote in that sometimes that workout. So sometimes first thing in the morning might be the best time for me to work out. Right. So I think there's that component of reality in life. And whereas if you have full flexibility over your schedule, I would say do what feels best. Mm-hmm. But if you don't, it's going to be when can you get it in? And for weight loss, it's not really about if we look at total energy expenditure throughout the day. You get about 10% from the thermic effect of food, right? The food you eat. And about that, if any, probably less than that from your actual workout. Like think about how hard it is to burn 500 calories. Like most people probably do in their workout. So where are you really burning your energy besides just your, just the energy it takes to keep you alive is through NEAT, which is what I'm really interested in now, is that non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So what are you doing throughout the day? If I think we pay more attention to that, that's where we can learn to control our weight as far as those micro movements, fidgeting, moving around, getting up, walking, doing those little things throughout the day. That's going to affect your energy expenditure much more than that 30-minute Peloton ride. I'm sorry,
Yeah. Well, that's actually really inspiring for people that don't take this 30 minutes of the Peloton ride.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's what I tell people too. It doesn't have to be if you have 30 minutes or 60 minutes, it could be throughout the day. You got 10 minutes at lunch, do some body weight squats, do some push-ups in between, Zoom calls. It's just those little things that add up throughout the day.
And there's I've seen on social media, a big push towards this idea of microdosing the workouts. Yeah. There's one guy, he had like a pull-up bar outside of his bathroom. Every time we went to the bathroom, we did like a few pull-ups and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it adds up.
Yeah, so I would imagine that also is setting up your environment for that success, right? Park your car a little bit further, put your lunch, if it's non-perishable, in your car, so you go out and every little activity that adds up during the day.
Yeah, and I think the idea of doing body weight squats and stuff is really underutilized because that's anyone can do it.
You got it wherever you go.
Wherever you go, and it makes it it also you feel better after you do that. It kind of wakes you up. If you were going to design the best breakfast for people, what would that look like?
Oh man.
Would you go Cheerios or Count Dracula?
Yeah, I know, right? or Fruit Loops, you get all the colors. No, I'm going to give simplicity a score because that's, I think, what a lot of people look for is, how simple. And so I like frozen blueberries, right? Because you can defrost them very easy. Blueberries rich in anthocyanins, and they also some benefits with like joint health as well. And folks with osteoarthritis, they eat blueberries. They have better gait. They have less pain. So I'm going to go with blueberries. And if you're not, I don't have any dairy allergies, like a Greek yogurt, high protein. It's relatively low sugar. That's how I start my morning off with. I might put a little creatine with a little bit of honey in there for flavor. But I won't say that's, perfect because then some mornings it might be a little venison and some eggs and corn tortilla, so I think there's no single answer. I think it's going to vary a lot from individual to individual. But if you can get a fruit, in there, or a vegetable in there to start the serving. So sometimes when I do the eggs or I do the venison, I'm going to throw some broccoli in instead of blueberries. So I kind of interchange those. So I'm either going to have some blueberries in the morning for breakfast to start off with the fruit, or if I'm doing eggs, I'm going to start off with some broccoli to start off with a vegetable.
Yeah. But notably, I didn't hear carbohydrates a lot of. Like, I didn't hear oatmeal or cereal. Like, that's not what I'm listening to. Right?
Well, and so like my son, he eats an oatmeal, and this is how my thought process is kind of adapted or evolved, is one, being a dietitian, but then just being a human and kind of an aging athlete, if you want to, at one time, is realizing that, nothing's wrong with carbohydrates. We just got to respect them as we get older. We got to earn them. Whereas my kids, they eat more carbohydrates because my 4-year-old son, he's a perpetual motion machine. He does not stop moving. So, that 100 grams or whatever he just moves and burns it off, whereas my job isn't as active anymore. So I don't, the blueberries have some carbohydrates in it, sometimes the corn tortilla and the other things, but I'm not eating a big heavy oatmeal. Now if I was going for 5-10 mile run that morning, and again I wanted to run as fast as possible, knowing that carbohydrates the most efficient fuel source, then maybe I would have that oatmeal. So,
do you think that a big change in the way that, like, the idea that we have to respect the carbohydrates as we get older, do you think that has mostly to do with the lack of activity, just the fact that we're not these motion machines the way that kids are, or is it more hormonal? I mean, like, I would say it's a mixture of both.
Right. There's probably a little bit of both going on there. I mean, a lot of it is movement, and we gain a little bit more body fat, or the average person, gains a little more body fat. Typically, they become a little, insulin resistant.
Yeah.
Body doesn't process carbohydrates as well, and that's can lead to those metabolic disorders of like the type 2 diabetes and things we see. So I would say it's some of that, as well as just again. Yeah, you mentioned hormones. I mean, this is a known fact. Is like premenopause and menopause. When you take away estradiol and estrogen in females, it affects insulin secretion. So to your point, then they don't handle, unless they're doing like hormone replacement therapy, which they get to figure out with their endocrinologist, of course. Then they literally don't handle those carbohydrates as well, or like they used to at least.
Friends, we hope you're finding value in the content. If you're enjoying what you're watching, please consider hitting the like button, help us with our YouTube algorithm, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on the notification button to stay up to date with everything going on in the channel. How much protein do you want to be taking in if you're trying to build muscle? Speaking of protein.
Yeah, you'll see 1.2 to 1.7 grams per kilogram of body weight, or, rule of thumb, since, we're in the U.S., we talking pounds, is, 0.8 grams per pound to a gram, depending on your goal. I go higher typically when I'm in when an individual's in a caloric deficit, because then I worry about the body breaking down that muscle protein. Whereas if I'm working with, like, say, a young athlete trying to gain muscle, young kid wants to play football, gain a muscle. Usually the biggest mistake I see there is they're not eating enough total calories. They don't understand that. They'll eat a lot of protein and not eat enough carbohydrates in that case, because it's like you need to have enough calories on board to be anabolic to appropriately use that protein. So because you don't want to use that protein as an energy source.
Right. Does the amount of protein change depending on the person's age, or is that recommendation pretty much across the board?
If you're going 0.8, to a gram, you're getting enough, but there is research showing that we don't use protein as well as we age. So we might actually need a little more, especially, high quality protein, rich in essential amino acids, which mostly come from animal sources, making sure we're getting, at least that kind of 3 grams of leucine to hit that leucine. The flavor piece of it. They don't taste as well. My dad has said that. He's like, I don't taste anything. And so then you don't have that same drive. So the meals aren't, as regular. So you might have one meal and it's not rich in protein. And then, that causes some muscle wasting or at least doesn't help preserve the muscle you have. So I would say as we age, we just need to be more cognizant that we're getting in those proteins and getting those meals in.
I just learned that, by the way, that we actually lose our taste receptors as we get older. I mean,
Yes.
I guess maybe I should have known that, but
No, I mean, there's so much stuff. Yeah, I had learned that in school, and I had learned it, forgot about it, and then my dad, who's 85, had just I was telling him to eat some protein or something, and he's just like, I can't taste it.
Right.
I don't have any taste, and I was like, oh my, we learned that in school.
Absolutely. I mean, we lose all 5 senses little by little, right? The sight, the hearing, the touch.
And then the olfactory, the smell. And there's some really, not to go down a rabbit hole, there's some really interesting research with the olfactory and the sense where there was a paper, talking about dementia and some of the memory loss, and they were exposing them to multiple scents. Did you see that paper? Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of exciting ways to, some of these things we think just happen to us, or they, like Alzheimer's. I know at one point it was always kind of thought it just happened or it didn't, and now we look at it more like a type 3 diabetes, right? Like there's metabolic things that go on that we can prevent and we can take action, so we don't have to accept, okay, we may end up like that. So I think that's the really the most exciting thing about all this.
The olfactory paper, I'm trying to remember, was it that they were able to reverse some of the symptoms by exposing them to different smells? Was that?
Yes. Yeah. It was like they had a nebulizer, I think, for 2 hours while they were sleeping, and it was like lemon or it was very and it rotated, and just by doing that, it improved their memory.
Yeah.
I mean, how exciting is that?
Very exciting. It's kind of frustrating because I want it to be 15 years later and know what we're going to find out, but it's very exciting because we're starting to learn that we can have control over some of these things, which is.
And a lot of the things I think
great.
you can extrapolate from other studies and other diseases, like multiple sclerosis has always been thought of, it pauses, here's the initial onset and then it pauses for years and then it starts up again. And more studies are showing that, no, it's actually an ongoing disease that's just happening slower than we were initially able to detect. And intervention is always helpful.
Right.
So
when it comes to protein, what are your favorite sources? It sounds like animal protein. Are there specific kinds of animal protein or?
Yes. I, love fish. I love, for the omega-3 fatty acids as well, which help with, brain health, cardiovascular health. I like wild game. Now, I am not a good hunter. So luckily, at least here in Texas, I can go to the store and buy venison, and you can get bison. So I eat a lot of venison and bison. There's even a meat company I'll order some elk from. So that's, if I'm going to go red meat, I like the wild a little bit, a little leaner. The flavor is also better for me. I'll still eat, a hamburger on occasion, but I do respect in terms of I'm not going to have, a steak every day. That's not me. And that's just because of, some people might debate me on that because I know the research goes back different ways, but the red meat association with colorectal cancer, is where I 1 to 2 servings a week I'll do, but I'm not going to do it every day. I'm mostly going to try to get fish. I'm going to try to get some chicken, those sources. I love eggs, and I do the whole egg, the yolk. It's got, choline in it and all your B vitamins. I like free range eggs. And then I don't have a problem with dairy. I know some folks, maybe listeners do, but because of that, I eat a lot of Greek yogurt.
Yeah, that's good for the colon too. When it comes to red meat, searing the meat, not so good, right?
Yeah, and there's to what dose, right? It's what is it? The poison's always in the dose, and I don't know because I like some seared red meat.
I mean,
and I'm in Texas. I know, right? Where it's great. If you add, I've seen the research. If you add like a citrus to it, like a lemon, or it helps with that.
Okay, I didn't know that.
But yeah, I don't. I still sear my meat maybe 'cause I'm only eating, 2 a day. I don't know if that's, or pardon me, about, 2 servings a week, if that. I don't know off the top of my head, like the hazard ratio of like, what's the,
But are you saying if you put in a little bit of citrus or like a little lemon, then it
yes.
uses the cancerous substances that come off with the searing?
Yes.
Ah, look at that. Okay.
Yeah. And another little tidbit I'll give you that I just learned was with, the mercury content in fish, because, the best is sardines, right? Small, non-predatory, but I still like tuna. And that's one of the fishes you get higher mercury in. But was drinking green or black tea with it, the catechins, there was a study where they did a stomach model, and they had mercury, and then they exposed it to the catechins and looked at absorption rates, and it was like it would reduce absorption by like 80%. So if you drink tea with it, so now it's a good excuse that whenever I'm having sushi, I'm always getting a green tea with it.
Nice. And I think also if you take selenium, right? If you take selenium, then it competes with mercury. Is that
mercury,
right?
yeah.
Okay, all right. Hey, I learned something today.
Hey, listen, it's a given.
Let me write that down. I like it. All right.
So selenium, you can take it by a supplement, and
Is there a specific dose, or?
ooh, now you're
No. I mean, I can look that up. Yeah, that's
you just went above my pay grade there. That's,
no. That's
but selenium as a supplement.
Yeah, we learned that not too long ago.
Yeah.
And we're happy to find that. Not to get off the topic of protein. Maybe I've been thinking about this all wrong, but I found it difficult to get all of the protein in the day for my allotment. So if I think of myself at 170 pounds, get 170 grams or...
You think of yourself at 170?
Well, when I'm actually 175.
I identify as 170. Sorry, okay.
Well, I fluctuate.
Yeah. As we do. So how do you get that?
Yeah,
protein
how do you get that
How do
protein
you
in?
get,
it's a challenge, right? And so I would go, if we're going, let's break it down here. It's going to take, doses of, we're going to make sure you get at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, probably 40 grams, right? That's what we go for. And then that gets you at 120, and then we break it out and then try to get some snacks in there. What do you like to eat as snacks?
Protein bars, usually.
What type?
Unfortunately, I forget the name, but usually 10 grams per serving for a bar. So sometimes that's my lunch, unfortunately. So that's not a snack anymore. That's a meal.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, and it might be, we might do a shake if that's an easier option for some folks. I know it's a challenge. Then, hey, I'm a food first person. I loved it. I'm like, hey, eat it. But at the same time, I carry whey protein in my backpack whenever I'm traveling, just because reality, right? You're running behind something. You had something that was supposed to be on Eastern time on Central time. That never happens. And, or something, so it's like, oh, that meal I planned, okay, it turns into a shake. So yeah, I would say, if you could do a 40 gram of whey protein, shake for lunch, then with that, bar,
Is there a max amount that you can absorb at one time? Like if you were like, I'm going to get my 100 grams now.
There was just a paper about that. And, the short answer, it's much higher than we thought, that you can go in, because you get both the anabolic effect, but then the anti-catabolic effect of the protein. So those amino acids are kind of going throughout your bloodstream. It's definitely better to split it up, throughout the day. But for most folks, I mean, yeah, you can go much higher than I think one time it was like, okay, 20 grams is all you
that's
can.
what I remember hearing, you said 20, 30 grams.
You can do it. But now that we've got some kind of more sensitive techniques of tracking that, and I am not an amino acid researcher, but there's some great ones. If anybody wants to look at some papers, Dr. Jessica Gwynn at the U.S. Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine. There's a guy, Dr. Stefan Pasiakos, who was there, and now he's at NIH. But they did a lot of trace, and a guy, Dr. Arnie Ferrando as well. Their techniques, they can trace it over time with isotopes, and so they found a lot of interesting things with the essential amino acids as well to look at. But the short answer being like, no, it's you can consume more than 20 grams and still get benefits from that.
And when it comes to if you're supplementing with protein, do you prefer whey protein? Do you prefer plant-based? Does it matter?
I prefer a whey protein because it's just a higher quality protein, like a whey isolate. Plants are fine if you're vegan or vegetarian, and that's pea proteins the best you can do, or that's your win. That's fine. It's not as high quality as the whey protein. Now, if you could supplement with enough leucine to make it close to the amount of leucine you're getting from the whey protein, there's been some papers that show then you get a similar kind of protein response if you wanted to get like a plant protein and fortify it with those amino acids that at the level the whey has, then maybe there could be some benefit. A point I'll make with this is also something I've just experienced is sometimes people will come to me and they want to go vegan or vegetarian for like weight loss. And I'm like, it's not always the case, especially when you look at protein. You get from animal sources, you get protein calorically more efficiently, much more than plant. And an example of this is, for the leucine, you get about 3 grams of leucine from 140 calories of beef. It'd take you 1,200 calories of quinoa to get that same amount of leucine. So it's not always,
Right.
Not everything that you take in is going to be bioavailable to you. So
Right.
that also
Exactly.
becomes an issue.
Yep.
So a while back, speaking of protein shakes, I used to drink my protein with grape juice. And the idea behind that was that if you have something that's going to
Insulin.
affect the insulin, right, it's going to help absorb that. Is there any evidence behind that?
Taking it with the carbohydrate, yes, it can help, and the insulin. I mean, if you're trying to maximize the anabolic response, I mean, I remember doing that with creatine monohydrate as well. Do you have to do that? No, but if you were absolutely trying to maximize your response, then that makes sense. Just knowing that, hey, you're getting some extra calories, and can you afford that extra calories, and that's going to vary from each individual.
It seems like if you're looking for the insulin response and you didn't want to have the extra calories, you could take an artificial, if you take an artificial sweetener, that also will get you that insulin response without that. I mean, how do you feel about artificial sweeteners generally, and does that make sense? I mean, it's obviously artificial.
Yeah, a little bit. You're not going to get to the same level of insulin response. Artificial sweeteners, it's funny because I get asked that a lot. And my thing is, if you're replacing like a Diet Coke for a Coke, that's a win. You look at the science. I mean, that's a win. No matter how you look at it, you're creating a caloric deficit because the dosages at which there's some concerns with the artificial sweeteners are much higher than what most people are consuming. Right? Most people aren't consuming like 50 Diet Cokes, which is what they're giving these, these lab rats.
Yeah.
It's not to say that we shouldn't continue to research and monitor. We know that, a lot of artificial sweeteners change the gut microbiome or have an effect on it. But again, if we're using an artificial sweetener to replace, sugar, and that's helping you create a caloric deficit, I never want a person to be like, oh, I can't, because I feel like sometimes we let, we're going for best, and it gets in the way of the good.
Right.
And then the other piece I point out to people that nobody wants to talk about is, ethanol is a class 1 carcinogen, has been classified as such since 1988, and yet we worry about artificial sweeteners. Like the same people that I have, and these are kind of calling out some people I work with, but like those people, man, they'll ask me all these artificial sweetener questions all day and worry about this and cancer and all like this, and I'm like, but I know they just went to the bar last night and had 3 or 4 drinks. So I'm like, really? Let's talk. Let's talk about acetaldehyde and what happens with it. And hey, I like a good microbrew, but I'm just saying again, like let's talk about where we focus our energy.
Perspective.
Yeah. Perspective.
That's funny. I'm not sure that now you've said something not great about red meat and beer. I worry.
Least favorite episode ever happened.
It's good you're a ranger. You'll be safe, but I worry for you.
And again, I like these things, and I like I like alcohol in terms of I liked beer. I like microbrews. I like bourbon at one point, but I will say, as I did more research, I've the past, like I would say 6, 8 months, like I haven't had any alcohol, and the reason for that is just, hey, I'm trying I know it affects my sleep. I track my sleep religiously with my Oura Ring and some other things, and I know it affects protein synthesis. And the good news is there's a lot more options now for like alcohol-free beverages and things that taste pretty good. So
Yeah.
it's not just one brand anymore. So
Right. Yeah. When it comes to the protein shakes, is there a benefit to drinking that after you work out to get the protein in faster? Because I would imagine you get it in your system faster like that.
yes, and that nutrient timing work was done by, to my knowledge, the first person was Dr. John Ivey out of the University of Texas. Did all that and showed that if you take in carbohydrates and protein immediately post workout versus several hours later, more of those nutrients are going to go to muscle protein synthesis and glycogen resynthesis. So you're going to get a better response. So the soonest you can take that in, if it's to maximize recovery, then that's beneficial. Again, if you're a recreational athlete or just trying to stay in shape, I wouldn't worry about it too much. And it's not always necessary. I'll give you the example of especially somebody trying to lose weight. Sometimes I'm not going to worry about necessarily a recovery shake right away because that takes away from some of the food they can eat. And I have seen folks, who will go to a gym and, maybe they expend 300 calories and on the way out, they grab a smoothie that's 300 or 400 calories and they wonder why they don't lose weight, so it's going to vary from individual to individual.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. When it comes to snacking, do you have some favorite healthy snacks that you like?
Yes. I love nuts. Nuts are great. You're getting a little, because I never like to eat just one, macronutrient, particularly if I'm just going to have a carb snack. I don't like that because, you get an insulin spike and it goes away and then you're hungry 5 minutes later, So I love nuts because I'm getting some protein, I'm getting some fat, I'm getting some fiber in there, and I can keep them in my desk. They travel well. I can throw them in a pack. I like dried fruit as well because, again, I can put them, in my backpack. I can go on a plane. I can travel with them. You do have to respect the amount of calories you can get from some, dried fruit. A bag of dried mangoes, you got about 4 servings in there, and it's really easy to eat the whole bag. So you got to, partition that out.
Are there nuts in particular that you like more than others, like Brazil nuts or almonds, or just nuts?
Yeah, nuts in general. Almonds and cashews are kind of 2 of my go-to that I really like. Again, the dried fruit, the freeze-dried, if I can get freeze-dried berries, which you can get at Target now, so I can get freeze-dried blueberries, freeze-dried strawberries, freeze-dried raspberries for when I travel and carry on a plane are great. Shakes, sometimes I take some protein shakes. They're very convenient. I like a vegetable juice if I can get a good quality vegetable juice. Now, I want to say that because there's a lot of vegetable and plant or fruit juices out there that are, they've got more sugar than a soda.
Right.
So you got to look at the label. There's a few companies that produce ones that are just, spinach, kale, some ginger, some lemon, boom, in a bottle. And yeah, I much rather eat that. But if I'm on the go and that's my best way to get it, bam, I can drink it and I'm good to go. I also like that. But I do want to be careful because and I'm not going to name, companies, but there are companies out there that you see everywhere at the gas stations, et cetera, that, it's a 300 to 400 calorie smoothie with 50 grams of sugar in it. And that's not the...
I've tended to think about those things as basically sugar water.
Right. But there are some good ones out there that,
Can you think of some good brands off the top of your head?
If you want me to say them, I can say it. Yeah. Pure Green makes a good. I do scientific advisory for them, so I will throw that out there. They make a good, just a lemon ginger with some stuff. Now, some people, I've had them try it, and they're like, it's a little too potent for them. So I get it. But then they make an apple lemon ginger that's a little more palatable. But there's even competitors like Soja that they make some good juice products as well. So again,
we'd be looking for just low sugar. And
that's
the ingredients basically.
Yeah, and even here in Texas, HEB, they have their own juice they do in house that you can look, and it's just some kale, some spinach, some lemon, some ginger, and they grind it up and they sell it. So you just got to read the label. And that's the other big key. If anybody's listening to this and you're not reading the label, you got to read labels.
Yeah. How much of the nutrients do you lose when you grind them up for juices? That's something I've always wondered about because I hear so many different things when it comes to shakes and smoothies. Do you lose a lot just by grinding up the fruits and vegetables, or not really?
I haven't seen anything where you lose anything. I mean, if anything, it would increase the bioavailability, right? If you're talking about just grinding it up, you're not boiling it, you're not
I like that answer. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
To me, that's my logic. I'm sure we could look at it. I'm sure somebody's done it where you drink and draw blood or something, but I mean, logically, I can't think of any reason why putting something in a blender you'd lose nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, what I've heard is just that the mere act of blending it.
But what happens in your stomach?
Yeah.
I mean, I would.
know. Spine and joint doctor. What do I?
No, I didn't get it.
Yeah,
I get
that's true. Although in the stomach, you're also closer to the time of
absorption.
So maybe there's something there, but.
And then there are claims of spinning versus domesticating juicers and so on. Do you know if there's any differences or any truth to those claims that one is better than the other?
What's that?
Like masticating juicers as opposed to spin juicers.
I haven't. Yeah, I don't know if there's any difference in that in terms of what they're. I mean, if you're drinking, ideally drinking everything like the pulp and all like that, then it's beautiful. You're getting some fiber and.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
You mentioned creatine a couple of times. How do you feel about? I mean, I imagine you're a fan. I'm a fan. Can you talk about creatine?
Yes, I can talk about creatine. Because it even goes back to, so I got my doctorate at Texas A&M, and I was lucky enough to be in the lab, in the exercise sport nutrition lab under Dr. Richard Kreider, who he did, I think when he was at the University of Memphis, some of the first creatine monohydrate studies in the U.S. Now, creatine was brought, to my knowledge, by Dr. Roger Harris in the UK. He was kind of the first to do those, strength and power. But creatine works. I would say the only other, if you want to call it dietary supplement or ergogenic aid that's probably better researched than creatine is caffeine, right, for effectiveness. So creatine is right up there. It for strength, for power, it works. Now, even for cognition, we're finding some stuff. For traumatic brain injuries, we're seeing some stuff. For sleep deprivation, it could help performance as well. Creatine monohydrate is what you want. Don't let them sell you the creatine alkaline, the creatine ethyl ester, the creatine hydrochloride. Again, Dr. Kreider has done a lot of that research where he's compared them, and creatine monohydrate wins out every time, and it's the cheapest, most effective. For most people, 5 grams a day will get you to where you need to be. However, if you're really small or really big, the specific dose by the International Society of Sports Nutrition is 0.3 grams per kilogram of body weight. And why I say that is I had a 110-pound female athlete I was working with, and 5 grams of creatine just tore up her stomach. It was just too much for her, so we did a more specific dose, and it worked out. Same if I was working with a 280-pound defensive end, he might be 6 or 7 grams. But for most people, 5 grams a day, 3 to 5, will get it done. And, you take it daily. You don't have to cycle on or off. It doesn't dehydrate you. I know of at least 3 studies that it improves thermoregulation because it helps your muscle maintain, fluid or more fluid. Now, with that being said, the side effect is weight gain. So if you're let's say an endurance athlete, you'll have to play with that. Will that weight affect your running capability? If you're a weight class athlete, knowing that going into a competition. So for instance, I work with a fighter who will go off creatine weigh-in week, but then he'll go back on it once they make weight. So
yeah. Does that drain him a lot, or not so much?
He's got it down to a science now. So he's got a plan. There's a guy, a great, phenomenal coach by the name of Martin Rooney, who also works with him, who's worked with fighters. Was one of the first kind of strength coaches to work in mixed martial artists, and developed a great kind of technique for losing the weight smartly and then really quick and then getting it back. My biggest thing with that is, if you're a weight class athlete, if you're a boxer or a mixed martial artist, is how you start that weight cut. The research shows you need to be within 8% of that target weight. When you go 10% or more, it's going to be hard to get you back to where you were by that, because you got 24 hours to rehydrate. So it's going to be really challenging, and that's when the weight cut really takes a lot out of you. Whereas if you're 8% or less, it takes less out. You're going to be hydrated. You're going to be, do better.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've heard you say that there's no loading really that's necessary for creatine.
Correct. The loading, if you had a event coming up in 2 weeks, you need to be topped off for, that's where it'd be advantageous. But it used to be, 20 grams for a week, 20 grams a day for a week to get it up. And yes, you'll reach tissue saturation more quickly. But for most people, you take 5 grams a day for 30 days, you're going to reach tissue saturation. And we're not, targeting a powerlifting meet. So it's fine.
And there's no harm in just staying on it.
No. Yeah.
Nice. And does it matter if you take it with sugar or anything like that, or just 5 grams?
You can just take it.
Monohydrate.
5. Yeah.
Okay. Break it up during the day, or it doesn't make a difference?
Just one time. Yeah. Okay. Take it in the morning, and then, it's convenient.
Are there other supplements that you like for muscle gain or for performance?
Yes. Creatine, obviously. Protein, if you're not getting enough or to really maximize it. Vitamin D, that's one that'll just pop up. And that kind of goes into joint health as well. There was a paper, a review, and it looked at, individuals that were at, I think it was 50 nanomoles, less than 50 nanomoles a liter. If you were low in vitamin D and you supplemented up with vitamin D, you had better outcomes from osteoarthritis. Now, beyond that, no better outcomes.
Yeah.
But then even in the war fighters or soldiers, we've seen a lot of them are sufficient or deficient. And so just, 2,000 to 5,000 IUs a day to make sure, particularly in the winter months, seems prudent.
It's astounding. I think it's something like 35 or 40% of the country is either deficient or close to deficient vitamin D. I mean, it's the numbers on the amount of people.
Yes, right.
Is really something.
Well, and part of it is, people think of like vitamin D and rickets. I think there's still that thought, it's like bone health. It's just a bone health thing.
Right.
And so, if you're insufficient, you might not get rickets. You might have good bone health, but is your muscle optimized? Is you have vitamin D receptors in your brain. There's, mood and cognition and all like that. And so that's what I, tell people, because most of the people I work with, I'm like, hey, you're not worried about being non-diseased. You're worried about being optimal. It's the same with like the protein recommendations, or, much lower if for the basic. And that's like, okay, so you're not protein deficient. Right. But the folks I work with, they want to be on another end of the spectrum. And so that's when we're looking at these dosages and the supplementation. I was like, let's optimize that performance.
How about magnesium? Do you supplement with magnesium?
Yeah, I take bisglycinate at night, 100 milligrams. It seems in times of stress, we use more magnesium, so it makes sense. And then to help with sleep, I take it. Trying to think if there's anything else. Omega-3 fatty acids, I take those, about 2,000 milligrams of fish oil, EPA and DHA. I've started taking zinc a little bit, more, especially with my kids. It seems like about every illness that passes through, school has made it into our house. And again, this is, I've started taking zinc, and this year I have, knock on wood, have not been hit like the rest of my family has been hit.
Is there research behind that, or is that more, it's like we all kind of associate together?
There is some research there. There's also some, again, with stress, we tend to, use more zinc. And I'm not taking, I got to, it just slipped my mind what dose I'm taking. I'm trying to think, but I got the bottle back behind me, but nothing, again, I'm not taking mega doses of anything, right? Like it's well within, an RDA dose of what what I take and supplement with, especially
kind of top it off.
Yeah. Especially with trace minerals or fat soluble vitamins. I'm not going to go high, just because, you worry about a toxicity at certain levels, or messing with the absorption of another thing like copper, right? So I don't want to do that as well.
It seems like there's a lot of buzz around urolithin A recently.
Oh, yeah.
Are you familiar with that? Are you interested in that? Does that?
I am very interested in it. I'm very interested in it. I got educated on that topic by Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. So she brought up urolithin A, kind of like you guys did with the selenium and mercury. I'm like, wait, what is this? I looked into it. There's a company, Timeline Nutrition, that study it, and they have some very interesting papers about it, and it's something that I might be adding to my routine. But I think with the mitochondria and the cell health, yes, it's something. And that's the other thing I think as we shift as we age, because early on in my career as a dietitian, like I just wanted like bigger, faster, stronger. What's going to make me lift more weights? What's going to make me grow more muscle? And that's like all I cared about. But now that I'm in my, mid 40s and with young kids, I'm like, what's going to keep me playing with my kids, picking them up, putting them down, and hopefully to see my grandkids? Like, what's going to keep me in that realm?
Right.
And that's where I'm seeing, the urolithin A, the nicotinamide, these more longevity supplements to increase my health span is what I'm more interested in now. Where like, bigger, faster, stronger. Yeah, I still lift weights, I still sprint, I still do all those things, but I'm not trying to break any records.
Yeah, it's like talking with Stu Smith, right? About, okay, so now how do we transition into more of a durability? And
Yes.
Still wanting to, work out and still wanting to eat well and all, but thinking.
Yeah, I mean, and look at Stu. I mean, he's out there.
Yeah,
I still can't get over him. Like out there with those 18-year-old, 20-year-old kids. I mean, working out every day. Like,
yeah, it's pretty impressive. I was gonna ask you. When it comes, I was going to mention when it comes to longevity supplements, resveratrol is another one. If you haven't, if you've ever, that's
Yes.
one I think that's
yep.
kind of belongs in that pantheon with NMN. And how do you feel about testosterone boosting supplements? Do you mess around with that or recommend it for people, or gimmick?
Mostly a gimmick, right? Well, let me take a step back. There are some legitimate pro-hormone supplements you can get off the internet. And some that are just basically weak anabolic steroids that are being sold as dietary supplements. If you see a 17, this is my rule of thumb, I tell athletes, if you see a 17, the number 17, and an alpha symbol and a dietary supplement label, run. Because that, they're trying to make an alpha alkylated, oral steroid. And I've seen guys get gynecomastia from it, elevated liver enzymes, jaundice, from these things. And they get strong and they get big. I mean, let's be honest, steroids work, but again, it shuts down natural production, the estrogen issues with the gynecomastia. There's all these negative effects that come with it that, pardon the pun, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, in that aspect. And the other side of it is, not to get into testosterone replacement therapy, but some people need that medical testosterone replacement therapy. But I will call out some of my friends and colleagues, young. They were in the military, they were hard chargers when they were young, and then they're in their 40s, and they're like, oh, I don't feel as good. I need to get on testosterone. And I'm like, hey, buddy, your diet's horrible. You don't sleep. You drink too much alcohol. And you don't exercise like you do, and you feel like crap. Okay, let's take a step back. I don't think testosterone is the issue here. Let's try that. I mean, alcohol suppresses testosterone. Let's cut back on the drinking a little bit. Let's get more than 4 hours of sleep a night. That'll help with the testosterone. Let's clean up your nutrition. That's going to help you. And let's lift some weights. Let's get back to the weightlifting. You forgot about that. You haven't been doing that in a while, and it's amazing. It's like you do those basic things, and most people feel pretty good. Now, there are some that, for whatever reason, maybe some environmental exposure, some genetics, whatever, they might need to go on replacement, and that's fine. But I would never use a dietary supplement just because of the risk to reward is just not worth it.
Yeah, it's amazing how back to basics fixes so many things. That's why. But that's why. It's good to remember that, and then it's also nice to around the margins to get that as good as possible as well. I want to ask about beetroot juice. Can I ask that?
Yeah.
Beetroot juice.
Yes.
So much about that. I've messed around with it. I haven't really felt any different when I drink it. But is it a good thing?
Yes. Yeah, it's great. Nitrates, increases nitric oxide, which increases vasodilation, which vasodilation, better blood flow, better performance, right? Better athletic performance potentially. So, and that's one of the things, if you heard of the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension, that's one of the thoughts of why that works, because it's very rich in vegetables that you're getting more nitrate, that it's causing vasodilation. That's one of the mechanisms. Now, the beetroot juice, knowing how much nitrate you're getting, is going to be tough, because it's going to depend where the beet's grown. It's kind of like caffeine and coffee beans. You're getting some, but we don't know, so it's going to vary. It's worth a try. The only thing is knowing that it's going to turn your urine red. Some people don't know that, so you need to warn them ahead of time. But I think it's, there's some good companies out there. Elite's one I know a lot of athletes use, that it can, especially if you're going to altitude. I tell people, when have issues, obviously use medication for altitude sickness, etc. But if you can increase that blood flow at altitude, then you're going to perform better. So much so, there was a study in elite cyclists, where they basically gave them Viagra, and they perform much better at altitude. So it's like, yeah, if you can increase huh? Yeah, right. I know. We won't talk about the side effects, but I mean that it's universal in terms of, you get better blood flow.
Yeah.
A lot of good things are going to happen.
How about nitric oxide supplements? Same kind of thing?
Not so much arginine, because they're usually arginine based. And what that was based on was some papers in people that had compromised blood flow, like aging, sick individuals. And if you give them arginine, it worked. It increased nitric oxide, and they had better blood flow. What the research has kind of like panned out is, in healthy individuals, I can give you a bunch of arginine, 8 grams, and it doesn't happen, because you're already good to go. Whereas the nitrates actually get converted. And the other thing with the beet juice that's kind of important with the nitrates, I learned, don't use mouthwash, because a lot of that bacteria that converts it to the nitrates are in your mouth. And if you use mouthwash, that'll actually decrease the performance effect.
Interesting. Okay.
Wow, that's interesting. I guess that's mouthwash with alcohol.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, if you had non-alcoholic, it would be fine, I guess.
Yeah. So.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
And if you're going to an altitude, then you would need to bring some beetroot juice. There's not like you can load up on it and carry over. It's something that you need to.
I think it would be good to start consuming it, so you kind of go with it already in the system, and then when you go up to altitude, to have stuff to maintain that level would be good as well. And then if you're going to altitude, if we're talking about that, I would definitely get my iron stores checked beforehand, because you might, you want an iron supplement to, if you want to adapt. That's another piece of it is, and we're not even talking about, there was a study in Marines that went to altitude, and I mean, it was male Marines. They weren't anemic, but giving them a little bit of iron when they got up to altitude actually increased their performance or their adaptation. So that's the other piece. Maybe listening is going to altitude for any amount of time. I would definitely get iron stores checked if you can before. But if not, maybe a low dose iron supplement while you're up there. If you're staying up there for a long, if it's a day of skiing and then you come back, no. But I mean, if you're up there for several, weeks or months, then yeah.
And what would you suggest? How do you suggest supplementing that?
It would be either, you could get a basic, kind of like a prenatal, vitamin, with some iron in it and take that. Or you could just increase your, red meat consumption while you're up there, if you had access to that as well. Mm-hmm. Green leafy vegetables have a non-heme iron in it. You just got to make sure you are taking in a vitamin C source with it. So, some sort of yellow pepper or something with your spinach.
Mm-hmm. There was something funny about thinking about a bunch of Marines taking prenatals.
I don't know if they were taking prenatals in that study, but they were, they're taking
No. But it's a convenient, easy.
Yeah.
When it comes to hydration, how much water should we be drinking in a day?
Rule of thumb I use is your half your body weight is in ounces a day.
Half your body weight,
yeah,
ounces. a day.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's if you're working out or not working.
Yeah.
That's like basic.
Yeah, just a basic, yeah.
And then obviously you work out, you should drink more.
Right. Yeah. So half your body weight, and then that's about the number of ounces you drink a day. And if you're working out, it could vary. And then I give the example, and that's why it's challenging sometimes with the Fluid Rex, because I'm in San Antonio, Texas. In the summer, my intake of fluid is a lot different than it is right now. And so the best tool a lot of people have, they don't even realize it, is their scale in their bathroom. If you can weigh yourself before and after each event, and for every pound lost, you drink 16 to 20 ounces.
That's a good rule.
You're gonna be hydrated. You're gonna stay hydrated, because usually it kind of creeps up on people. You get a little dehydrated one day, you don't drink enough. And then the other piece, and I don't have it good, I had my tea here today, but is keeping I usually keep a water bottle nearby, just because there's a guy, Dr. Tim Noakes, who's done a lot of hydration research, and he found that thirst is a lagging indicator for everybody, and in some it's a really lagging indicator. You can be down several liters before you're actually thirsty. So that's why if you have some sort of mechanism to remind yourself to drink during an event or to get that fluid in. And then the other piece, back to kind of weight control, is if you think you're hungry, drink 8 ounces of water, because a lot of times you might be thirsty. And sure enough, in every nutrition class I give, there's at least 1 or 2 people who are like, oh yeah, I've had that happen before, so.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so that's for people to realize that by the time they're feeling thirsty, they're already behind.
Exactly.
They're already dehydrated.
You're already dehydrated. Yeah.
How do you feel about sports drinks and like supplementing with electrolytes? Is that
if you earn it? Again, it's back to did you earn it? If your workout is 45 minutes, hour or less, you're not a heavy sweater, water's fine. You get electrolytes from the food you eat. But again, you're out in the sun, you're out in the heat. If you gentlemen made the mistake of coming to San Antonio in August and you're not acclimated and you go out for, a 5-mile run, you definitely want some electrolyte beverages. And so with that, I always get, okay, what's the best one? And the best one is simply the one you want to drink.
Yeah.
We found that in the military. We did this thing where we created these oral rehydration salts, and it was like the perfect ratio of sodium, potassium, and it tasted horrible. And soldiers would not drink it. So what do they do now? They give, Cerolite, Liquid IV. There's another one I can't think of. Like all these different brands are actually, we can give to soldiers, and it's a lot of like, what flavor are you going to drink? Are you going to mix up and you're going to actually consume?
Yeah. By the way, I loved that you were talking with, I forget who, but you were talking about how you got younger soldiers to have a better diet.
Oh, yeah.
And can you tell that story real fast?
Yes.
I thought it was such a great way of sort of emphasizing how you have to meet people where they are.
Oh, yeah. And that was, I'll tell that story. So I was a new dietitian. I had just got to Killeen, Texas. And one of the things with the Army is you have to maintain a certain body composition. We have a tape test. And if you're over that, you have to see a dietitian. And so this location I was at, it was, Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos, Texas. There was a lot of soldiers over body composition. And so my first class I gave them every information, every subject I learned in school, I dumped it on these soldiers. And I walked out of that briefing feeling like I had saved the world. I had changed all their lives. I like patting myself on the back, throughout my shoulder. And so you can imagine how surprised I was at the next class a month later. I see all the same soldiers. None of them lost weight. Like not one of them lost weight. Everybody was right there, looked exactly the same, or looked like they gained some weight. I didn't know what, it bothered me. It really it shook me to the core that I had to totally sit down and reassess my way of thinking. And so I'm like, hey, I got to find out what motivates these people. I got to, it's not information, it's implementation, right? So most of the soldiers in that class were private first class. Private first class, the next promotion is a specialist, right? And there's a pay gap in between that. And when you're flagged, you can't get promoted. And so it's costing them that pay gap every month. And so I calculated that out. And then the next class, I forgot what the number was. I was like, hey, I want to thank everybody paying, $1,200 for this class. And these soldiers like, wait, sir, I thought it was for free. And I'm like, no. And I broke it down for them. I was like, look, you guys are private. You want to get promoted to this. This is the difference right here it's costing you every day. Now, I'll tell you what, I can teach you how to get that money, but you got to listen to me for the next hour and we'll come up with a plan. Does that sound fair? And then they're like, all right. And so we did that. And then, hey, it didn't work for everybody, but like half the soldiers the next class were gone, And so it's finding them, what they want. And that might be totally different if it was, a 40-year-old first sergeant. Then I might be like, hey, you want to play with your grandkids? All right, let me show you how you can play with your grandkids, But a 20-year-old, they're not thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's finding that trigger that can pull someone in. That's, and for yourself. I mean, just to recognize what's really motivating me and how can I, articulate what I want to do so that it actually resonates with my, motivations and values and stuff.
That's the biggest piece. I just spoke with my students, and I'm getting ready to retire. I retire in August from the military. And so a group of my students had asked me to come and speak with them. And, one of the biggest things I gave them, I was trying to think of like what I could tell them. I was like, learn how to sell. Like we learn science, we learn motivational interviewing now. We talk about, that, but it really like a lot of it's like, you got to sell people on this nutrition plan. You got to sell them on you. You got to sell them why a dietitian, they should listen to you. Especially, I held up my phone. I'm like, I didn't have to compete against Instagram. Man, you guys have really got your work cut out.
Yeah, no kidding.
I guess I'm competing against Instagram now, so I shouldn't say that. But I mean, yeah, there's a lot more distractions. There's a lot more noise now. So you've got to be, all the more sharper with your message.
I remember years ago, I heard Schwarzenegger saying that everyone's a salesman, right? Because you can, no matter what your field is, if you're an actor, you're selling, for the movie.
It's true, right? It's so true.
Whatever it is.
But did you guys? I mean, did you ever take a sales class?
No.
Right, like so that's what I've found myself now.
I had the same thing going into medicine. I remember they were talking about how you have to be aware culturally, and that they were just starting to get into that. And I remember thinking, that's really not my job. My job is I'm going to show them the science and I'm going to lay it out and then make a decision about what they want to do. And, very quickly you get disabused of that because you realize how just ineffective that is. So, if you don't want to be effective, it's fine. But if you actually want to help people, that's not going to work.
Right. Exactly.
What we find, though, is we deal with a lot of patients with pain. And you would think that pain would be a great motivator, and it is when it's present. But as soon as it's gone, 2 weeks ago they were in pain and we got them out of pain, and now, okay, here's what you do to keep yourself away from it. And nope, people fall off the bandwagon very, very quickly.
Yeah. I've started to tell people when they're in pain, look, this is not really the conversation for now, but I want you to remember how this feels and use that as your fuel for when you're feeling better to, it's hard to, you're fighting human nature a lot of the time. Yeah. I really wanted to ask you, speaking of joint pain and spine, how do you feel about collagen supplements and eating foods with collagen?
I like it. I know Dr. Keith Barr did some good stuff with collagen, BAAR, with taking, 15 grams with about, I think it's 48 milligrams of vitamin C and showing that helps with, that process of building up the collagen in the joints. I know there's some debate. For me, I look at a lot of these things as kind of like risk versus reward. Taking in some collagen, very low risk, And so if there is a potential there, and it kind of makes sense with, hey, we want to repair our muscle tissue. It's made out of protein. Let's take in some protein.
Right.
Our joints, we need collagen. So with that, I think it's prudent that let's get some, collagen in the diet. If you want to take a collagen supplement, by all means. I mean, Jell-O is pretty cheap, right? Mm-hmm. You could take, so that's where I'm at. Again, I fully realize that it's not, for sure, like, hey, this is going to change your joint health. But for me, I'm all about trying everything that works and that might work.
Well, to me also, it's a little bit like resveratrol or NMN, where you look at risk versus reward.
Exactly.
And you say, well, is it bad for you? Not that we know. Is it good?
Yeah.
A definite maybe.
Well, and even kind of along those lines in a different area is I talk to my students about performance nutrition, and I'm like, in the real world, I'll take the placebo effect every day with my athlete. Every day. If that athlete thinks that helps them perform, And they go out there and they, in that fight, in that race, in that whatever, and they do it and it doesn't hurt them. I'll take it. I'm not going to try to tell them, be like, the science doesn't really show that you should run faster or you should fight harder. No, I'm going to be like, go, you want that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's funny studies where even when people are told that it's a placebo, like
they still have you
still get the results, which is
something about taking something and before you go do an activity. Yeah.
Right. And knowing that you just took it and then, okay.
Yeah. Now if they're, I'm trying to charge you $100 for a placebo, Bob, that's a different thing. But again, if
there is a great irony that the more that you spend on a placebo, probably the better.
Yeah, they're probably right.
Which is
maybe we should look into that a little more.
That could be your post-military career.
Yeah, really expensive placebos. That's what
really expensive. Not just placebos, but designer placebos that are ultra expensive, only for luxury. When it comes to the microbiome, how much stress do you put on that, and what kind of foods do you like for microbiome health?
Yeah, the microbiome, that's exciting. That is exciting stuff. There's a guy, Dr. Phil Carl, again, I was at USARIUM, so I'm going to name these scientists because there's so many brilliant scientists up in Natick, Massachusetts. But he's up there and does a lot of the microbiome research, and he got me turned on to it, and it's just so fascinating, all the stuff it does. However, he, whenever I ask him, and it's been a while, so I might bother him after this podcast, but there's no specific probiotic or, that you should take. It's more like eat a variety, get a variety in your diet. So with that being said, I drink kefir, a yogurt beverage. I take in different yogurts. I'll eat sauerkraut. I'll eat kimchi. I love kombucha. So I'm trying to take in a lot of different, good bacteria. And with that, I'm also taking in a lot of fiber as well, because that's the prebiotic that bacteria eats. So don't forget that component of it. And that's what I'm doing. And now if I take an antibiotic for whatever reason, I'm really focusing on taking that in. And I will tell you, I don't know if I shared this on another podcast, but I recently, like in the past year, had my gut microbiome had a test done on it. And one of the questions they ask you is like, how many rounds of antibiotics have you taken? And I rarely get sick. So I said it's like, have you taken 5 or more? And so I was like, no, I have not. When I got my results back, it was like flagged that I had. And I'm like thinking in my head, whenever we deploy in the military, when we went to Afghanistan, we took doxycycline as an anti-malarial, which is a, antibiotic. So I'd probably done like 20 or 30 doses of that. But I hadn't been to Afghanistan in years. My biome still, it was detectable that it was different, like it had been exposed to a bunch of antibiotics. So it's interesting, a little scary, because I know there's a lot of other soldiers out there who's probably the same, but thinking about that is like, man, I would have been more measured and kind of, when I got back and doing those things. And now I tell everybody that story just for that reason, that, hey, if you're going on antibiotics for whatever reason, people with Lyme disease, that's a treatment, all these different things they might not be thinking about is make sure you're getting in that yogurt and those good things, because that can affect your biome for quite some time.
That is really surprising that years later it was still affecting it. Well, that's sobering. Yeah. If people come in complaining about fatigue as one of their, symptoms, are there diet recommendations that you like to give for boosting energy?
As far as for fatigue, I would look at, make sure, one, how many calories are they taking in? Are they taking in enough, right? And then, go down the spectrum of, are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough iron? Looking at those micronutrients. Let me even take a step further back. I'd be like, hey, how much are you sleeping? To start that. Because I see things like that a lot of times. But as far as like, diet, I mean, a lot of it's, if you're getting the sleep and the nutrients, then that should handle it. I don't think there's any special magical, one supplement or one food that's going to help you with fatigue. It's more kind of a holistic approach.
You've been so generous with your time, Nick. Thank you so much. Friends, thank you for your attention. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation. If you find value, please remember to hit the like button to help us with our YouTube algorithm. Consider subscribing to the channel and turn on the notifications so you can stay up to date with everything going on with the channel. And please leave us a comment, let us know what you thought about this show and also what you'd like to hear about in the future.